Next, we have ordinance 2024-11I.
Mr. President, I make a motion that we amend ordinance 2024-11I, line item 9513-11301 second deputy. It currently reads 25,000, and I would like to amend that to 2,500.
Thank you for that. I did talk to Rick earlier, and that's what he was requesting that to be. We had a motion to pass with that one change of the second deputy by Councilwoman Keller, and we had a second by Councilman Vaughn. Any discussion?
So my motion stems from, I noticed this line item and it looked a little high to me. And so I went and looked at the requested 2025 budget. This is in the auditor's plat book maintenance fund, which is one of those miscellaneous funds. And what had been requested was 2,500 for the second deputy, 77,500 for machinery and equipment, and $81,850 for professional services. But that 2,500 did not match the 25,000 I was seeing in the salary ordinance. So I did go on Indiana Gateway, and Indiana Gateway was showing the following as both published and adopted. So it showed that for the second deputy published 25,000, and that's saying that's what we adopted. And it said for machinery and equipment 75,000, and professional services $61,850. And so at some point those numbers were changed without council approval, and so that's why I want to make sure that the salary ordinance reads the 2,500, which was what was requested to the council, and we did not make any changes to that number.
Councilman Gill, do we need to change and amend the other two because they don't, or you just?
No.
Well, the other two are not salaries.
Yeah.
And they're actually lower than what was requested, and so I think it's appropriate to leave them as is.
So you want to leave it just one?
Yeah.
It appears at an extra zero, Scott.
No, it's not, because they changed the other two line items so that the total fund number was the same. So that's an intentional. It's not a zero that got left off or added.
You don't know that it was intentional.
I absolutely do.
No, you don't. And the person that did that's not here to
read
discuss
aloud the email response that I got. Bethany, Todd does the upload, and he wrote the budgets for the miscellaneous funds because I will not be here next year. Although the total budget did not change, I didn't authorize any changes to these line items, and they should read as follows. Second deputy, 2,500, machinery and equipment, 77,500, professional services, 81,850. This matches the miscellaneous budgets I sent on to the council on 8/16/2024. I would only approve the salary ordinance in the amount of 2,500 and the line 1181111301. If he's requesting something different, he will need to make a request next year. Thanks for bringing this to my attention, Rick.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this?
Not on that, but on this I do.
Okay.
Okay, so I wanted to bring up the 4967. There's no names here, but it's give me a minute. It's the recycling director. So we had some conversation last year about the exempt versus non-exempt employees. There were a total of 9, I believe, that were going to have to be evaluated. And if we didn't increase the salaries up to 58,656, then they were going to have to go to non-exempt status, which I had a conversation with Ben earlier today, and I looked at all of the other salaries, and they stayed at what they were. And I know there's been conversation with the commissioners to change those positions to non-exempt positions. Now that one there, it's not the increase is in the budget, but that's an increase of almost $10,750. We'd have to justify the overtime for a year to accumulate to that amount in order to give that amount of an increase. Does that make sense? Because once they go to non-exempt status, then if they work over 40 hours, they would get overtime. Are you guys following me?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm not in favor of raising that salary to 58,656. I realize it's not a general fund budget, but I think it needs to stay where it's at and go to non-exempt status like we did with all the rest of them that were, had to be addressed this year. And so I wanted to have some conversation with council about that before
And we have clarification.
Page number real quick, sorry.
on what are you,
I'm looking at the
I'm sorry.
ordinance, I'm just trying to find.
They're in order by number,
Okay,
Ben?
what number is that one?
4967. There's no page numbers on this.
Okay, so sorry, Councilman Don, I just wanted to.
Do we have clarification whether it's director, non-exempt or exempt or?
No, they are currently an exempt employee.
Okay,
They are one of them that is a PAT, which is Professional Administrative and Technology Employee. However many I said, there was just a handful that had, the federal government said if you're gonna have them on exempt status as a PAT, they have to go up to 58,656. All of the other ones that were on this list that we had, we left, and they're gonna be switched over to non-exempt, and they'll be able to get overtime. Okay, because the amount of the increases were pretty substantial in most of them, only one wasn't. That even with overtime, they're never gonna utilize up that amount of funding, if that makes sense.
right.
This one here didn't get caught.
Was it omitted, what did we pass?
We passed the 58,656, is that?
Yes,
Okay, I'm looking at the right one. And I think the focus on exempt versus non-exempt was as we were trying to budget the general fund, or to balance the general fund, we had to make that determination that certain people would have to go to non-exempt because we just simply couldn't afford to move them all to exempt. And I think that there was not it didn't seem necessary to focus on that or make that same determination on funds that were outside of the general fund. There was money in some of these other funds to cover those things. So for me, it was more about exempt, non-exempt, was more about balancing the general fund. That was kind of where my head was. So
and I get that, I do. But to increase this salary by over $10,000, when we've got a lot of positions within our general fund that are very comparable positions and they're being paid less than that, I just don't think that that's correct to do that.
So Councilwoman Norton, what's your motion?
So my motion is that it needs to go back to the 47,249.28.
just to be correct in how we're doing this, we do have a motion in a second with the amendment in the $2,500 amount. So then you would need to amend.
So
that.
I'm making an amendment to include the $2,500 plus the director goes back to 47,259.28. And then have a conversation with the commissioners to have that also changed to non-exempt.
Right.
Okay, we have a motion and a second on the amendment to the motion. So is there discussion on that amendment?
It was our intent, because I remember that conversation, did that just get overlooked and we forgot to take it since?
I think it was overlooked personally.
Because it was
in a,
non-exempt.
correct.
This is in the miscellaneous funds that we never looked through.
Because nobody else got it. Nobody
Correct.
else. So it was an oversight on our part.
Yes.
And there's other increases and other pay increases in the miscellaneous funds, but not that affect the exempt versus non-exempt.
Councilwoman North, remind me, what was that number you?
47,250. I'm sorry. Let me start over. $47,249.28.
Okay. So any other discussion on that?
It is line. The department is 4967, and the line number is 11002.
Okay. Okay, so we need to, well, the original motion had the first change. So we would need to vote on this current amended motion, and then we'd be to the original, correct?
As long as Ms. Keller and Councilman Klein is trying to determine that
Yeah.
as opposed to just the amendment that you vote on and then you vote on it.
Right,
Do you want me to withdraw my motion so it's easier?
No, because she was the first motion. So
Yeah, don't do
that's
that.
what I'm just getting to, yeah.
Gotcha.
So she was the very
So
first.
she's presented it as amended.
Right.
Understood. So now we have one amendment to the motion. We'll handle that. The
then, so we will be voting on the amendment that Councilwoman Norick, made, or made the motion for, and then we had Councilman Bond that seconded that.
And my motion included her amendment as well. Okay.
You amended her.
I amended her amendment motion.
Okay, all in favor then of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, that passes. So now we get back to the original motion that has been amended. Let me jot this down here so. Okay, so is there any discussion then on the motion as amended?
Do we want to discuss any of the other pay increases of the miscellaneous funds?
If someone wants to make another motion
What
to
is it?
amend, we could. but-
What was it, Councilman Gill? I didn't hear, sorry.
Right now, what we're discussing right now is Councilwoman Keller's motion that has now been amended by the motion put forth by Councilwoman North. So that's basically the ordinance with two line items changed. One was the 25,000 to
Correct.
2,500, and the other one was the director of recycling. That salary went down. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
Alright, let's try this. I make a motion to amend, the current motion to just remove the salary ordinances that are in the miscellaneous funds, and that would revert back to 2024. So that way there would be no pay increases out of the miscellaneous funds.
I need English, because I don't understand what
Yeah, so
we're,
amendment number,
Yeah, we had the maintenance in there too.
I don't understand what
yeah, so
we're.
amendment number 2. Okay.
All the miscellaneous.
We talked about this during budget time, and matter of fact, I think we even voted on it,
What is,
that
But we never actually brought up
Councilwoman
the,
Keller, let Councilman Emery finish his.
sorry, I thought you was
Comment.
finished. Go ahead.
we're passing up on the opportunity to give pay raises out of other areas other than the general fund to people who we all agree deserve pay raises. We're never gonna be able to give pay raises if we don't give pay raises out of things like the miscellaneous funds, so that we can use the general fund, the limited resources we have, the general fund, to give pay raises to the other folks next year. So again, if we just keep saying we're not gonna give raises till we give everybody a raise, we're never gonna give anyone a raise. So you've gotta get past that. You've gotta get past saying, it's all or none. If we do that, no one ever gets a raise in the county. You have to give raises as the revenues become available, whether that's through general or through miscellaneous funds. You take small bites at the apple. If we wait till we can eat the whole apple, it's never gonna happen. So again, we discussed this during budget time, so I think we're beating a dead horse here.
So let's make sure real quick, we have a motion, we don't have a second for this yet. Would anyone like to second this?
well, you
To
got
allow
to
us to
stop
further.
too.
Well, I'm just saying, under Robert's rules, we really need to have a second if we're going to discuss this.
I bet, can I say something legally and don't think back, I mean, this is something
I'll
that.
second it.
we're-
Okay, we have a second by Councilwoman Norick, thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
I called down the state about a couple of those funds, and the state told me in the prosecutor's office, you can't regulate. So now you're treading the illegal line. So if everybody know what you guys are doing, because you're not allowed to touch some of these funds. I'm not saying every fund, but I called down there and they said they answer what discretionary funds in the prosecutor's office. I even talked to Mr. Hand about it. So I don't think legally you're getting in an area where we shouldn't even touch. You better be careful. Have you went down and talked to anyone in the state about this? Because we're to be getting ourselves in some trouble here.
My issue with this is that we never, like during the budget adoption, we never brought up the miscellaneous funds to go through. And obviously that's how we missed the line item that we thought we were approving at 2,500 actually got put into Gateway at 25,000 because we never brought up the spreadsheet to see what was in it and to see the $10,000 to $20,000 pay increases that are in that fund. And so my issue really is that we didn't go through it and know what we were approving.
Well, I went through it and I knew exactly what I was approving, so.
So you didn't catch that changes have been made without council approval?
We approved what was originally presented to us. That's what.
That's not what Gateway is saying, and
That,
that's what I'm saying.
that was entered in after the, as everything was changed on our budget adoption. So.
Gateway's showing it as both advertised and adopted, which means that the advertised was actually entered in before we adopted it.
Well,
That was changed without council.
yeah. And we don't need to get back into this. The process was explained during our budget adoption night, as to how their software works and what order you have to do things. So we'll move on.
If we just brought it up on the council adoption night, we would have seen the changes and we could have addressed it then.
Yeah, and the council already voted to appropriate this money, so I feel like, as Councilman Emery says, it's kind of silly to appropriate raises for people that we can appropriate raises for, and then to revoke them in an ordinance.
Mr. Dalton, can you back me up on that? Some of these funds we can't touch. I called the state, I mean, they literally told me that we can't, I just want to know.
Sure, some salaries are set by statute.
We can't hear him.
Okay, so is there any further discussion on this ordinance? So now we have the second.
I'll withdraw my last motion.
Okay, so then we are back to the motion, which we're at two changes now, the 25,000 to the 2,500, and then the recycling center director salary was decreased. We've not voted on, we voted on your motion to amend, but we haven't voted on the whole thing yet.
Right.
What's that salary line need to be, Mr. Hector?
I wrote it in here, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion on this ordinance then? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? That passes on first reading. Okay, ordinance 2024-11J, which is the recorders.